Hello, and welcome to Symbiosis' inaugural podcast for healthcare professionals who are starting their own private practice. We chat with successful veteran private practice owner-operators who share their hard-won experiences. Our goal is to empower you with valuable tips on how to open, operate, and grow your private practice. I am your host, Seung-Ho Jung. Today, Dr. Sapna Doshi of Mind Body Health will be joining us to share her experiences in building essential systems for a successful practice. Dr. Doshi is a clinical psychologist with unique training in eating disorders and weight management. She received her PhD from Drexel University and completed her internship at Duke University Medical Center. Dr. Doshi has served as a clinician on several NIH grant-funded trials testing innovative approaches to the treatment of eating disorders and weight management. She additionally provides evidence-based treatment for commonly comorbid disorders such as insomnia and anxiety and depression. Dr. Doshi created Mind Body Health in November of 2014 and is primarily based in Arlington, Virginia. Mind Body Health earned the Fast Four Award by Arlington County in both 2017 and 2018 for fastest growing company in Arlington. Dr. Doshi's practice currently has 25 clinicians and 2 administrative staff, with a second location in the Capitol Hill neighborhood of Washington, D.C. Dr. Doshi, thank you for joining us today.
Thanks so much for having me.
It's a pleasure to have you. Let's get started right away. Now, you run one of the most successful practices in Northern Virginia and in the greater Washington area. Could you please tell us about what inspired you to create Mind Body Health and the journey that you took to have one of essentially probably one of the most successful psychology practices in the greater Washington area?
Yeah, I started my career about, it's been 8.5 years ago. And when I first moved to the Washington, D.C. area, I joined another private practice. And over the 2 years that I was there, I was inspired to branch off on my own because I just felt like there were things that I would do differently and I wanted to experiment with that. But most importantly, I was providing a specialty in the area of eating disorders, weight management, health psychology that were very specific, and not a lot of providers in the area were necessarily providing those services. So I felt the desire to be able to offer something unique to people in the area that needed this type of help. And so I started that off, and I really focused on providing specific evidence-based practices based in cognitive behavioral therapy and acceptance and commitment therapy, which I also thought wasn't widespread amongst the clinicians in this area. And so my caseload eventually got full, and I brought on people that did very similar things to what I was doing in terms of specialty and the way the approaches that they were using. And so their caseloads got filled up. And so we just kind of noticed a clear need in the community for these types of services. And so we've just been growing over the years, and it's been really cool to see that we can help people in this way.
That is fascinating. And it sounds like you really answered a need in the community. What were some of the three key, if I may ask, what were some of the key transformative challenges at the beginning of starting Mind, Body, and Health? And how did you overcome these three key transformative challenges?
Yeah. So my answers are probably going to be a little bit psychological in nature, more or less like business terminology, probably, just because that's the way I think. But one of the biggest challenges I remember looking back at when I first started my practice was self-doubt. I mean, I didn't have an ounce of experience in owning a business. No one in my immediate family or extended family in the United States had owned a business. So I didn't know what I was getting into. And I think that self-doubt easily could have taken over, where I just abandoned the idea and just went to work for somebody else. So that was really challenging in the beginning. And then related to that, I think I was pretty young in my career. It was my second year into like my first adult job, and so I really was concerned about how I was going to get people to take me seriously and understand that I really was an expert in this area. And I also was struggling with how I was going to convince myself of that too. I had major imposter syndrome at the time, not really feeling confident in myself. And that was a tough thing to work through initially too. And lastly, I think the third thing when I look back that I really struggled with was work-life balance. You know, this was my main source of income, and Washington, D.C. is not a cheap area to live in. So I was really anxious about making money, and I worked way too much in the first 2 years of my business, and it definitely impacted my health and my well-being in those 2 years. So that was something to work through. That was really hard too.
Yes, and please, it doesn't have to be business. It's everyone. These all private practices, in our experience, have approached it in their unique way, and the way that they approach it uniquely is often the best sign of success. And the metrics speak for themselves with mind, body, and health.
Thanks.
Uh, so moving along, what were some of the systems that, especially, let's return to work-life balance. What was some of the systems that really helped you balance work-life, uh, create this work-life balance in terms of creating a system for that?
Yeah, you know, it took a few years, I think, where I had enough money coming in where I could start offloading and delegating certain things to other people. But one of the things that and I created many systems. I mean, one of the things I was really focused on over the years is building efficiency in my practice. And so at the end of the day, I wanted to make sure I was in a flow throughout the day, so I was getting everything done, and at the end of the day I didn't have anything hanging over my head, so I could truly relax and enjoy myself. And but part of that was starting, as the business was growing, was starting to delegate some of these things to other people, which was challenging. I mean, this was my baby, my practice, and I had worked
Mhm.
hard. So handing off parts of that to other people was challenging. But the more I created efficiency and started developing trust in others and um, giving pieces of the work to other people, I was able to reduce my caseload, spend some more time taking good care of myself. And I found that to be incredibly useful because the more I was taking good care of myself, the better quality care I was providing. And I think that really speaks for itself. And in our work, the burnout rate can be quick and it's
Mhm.
hard. Um, so the self care just became crucial to focus on.
Returning back to efficiency. Now, you stated that creating successful systems that were efficient were one of the key steps to get it to making sure that your practice was successful. Could you share with us some of the key metrics that would quantify or qualify whether a system is efficient or whether it's actually just seems efficient but is actually not efficient?
Yeah. Um, so I think quantitatively, like one of the things that I look for, especially financially, is that I put a lot of energy into creating a system around accounting and finances. And so at the end of the week or the month, my bank account should balance my bookkeeping and there should be minimal to no outstanding balances. And in order for that to happen, I have to make sure procedurally that we are collecting payment. We're not chasing payment down. We're not spending so much energy doing that. So creating a system in which we take the credit card, we run it. And part of that, I think, it becomes so important to have consolidated systems. So I've seen a lot of people have, you know, one system to take payment, one system for scheduling, another system to write their clinical notes in. And so I took a lot of time to figure out which company was going to be able to provide all of this in one package for me. So quantitatively, having all the numbers kind of line up and with a click of a button, just looking at things without having to really figure out where things have gone awry, where I need to chase down the money. And I think qualitatively, what becomes really important is, um, for me, making sure, like, if I'm getting tons of questions from patients and my contractors or employees, then something's not working. Like, everything should be clearly spelled out. Everyone should know where to get the information they need. And for me, that's a procedural system that became really important, so that I'm not spending all day kind of chasing down these or answering all these questions for people. I think qualitatively too, just this sense of feeling like I'm caught up all the time. Like, I don't have anything hanging over my head, no loose ends. Come tax time, I'm ready to hand everything over to my accountant without a lot of stress. So I feel like if I've got my systems in place, at the end of the day, I can walk away from work and focus on other things.
Thank you. And that also raises an interesting question. Based upon your experiences, um, what were some of the most common mistakes in implementing systems
Mhm.
that may have been less efficient, that may have taken more work than they actually needed,
Mhm.
um, and created what you talked about earlier, this work-life imbalance.
Mhm. Yeah, so I think one of the things I've seen a lot of private practice owners do that I noticed was really inefficient was having disjointed systems. And I think a lot of this comes from cost saving measures. There's a lot of services that you can use that are free, or you have less of a credit card charge using one company versus another. And so I have found that there's so much inefficiency when these systems that may have been saving you money or were like 10 different systems, and you're opening up 10 different operating systems. And you couldn't just look at everything holistically in a snapshot in one kind of EMR system. And so I think that was really important for me to look at. It's tempting to save money in that way, but time is money. And if you're being more efficient, you can spend more time with that work life balance, being better at your job. You can spend more time networking, building relationships, all the other things that go into business that are going to be the crux of your success, I think.
Yeah, that is very fascinating because I've had, in our experience with Symbiosis, we've also had lot of the similar experiences that you've had where practitioners will opt to take the free version of a software for one set, the free version for another, um, and essentially get mired down in trying to switch from one system to another another and trying to put all the right information in. So we understand that it can be a very daunting process. And what I'm hearing here is that you're saying invest in a reliable software that can be consolidated.
Absolutely. It's worth the investment, in my
Mm.
opinion and my experience.
What are some other common systems outside of just the EMR accounting altogether that you would say is essential? Maybe two or three other systems that are essential for a
Mhm.
first-time private practice owner operator.
Yeah, so I think you have to think about your marketing system and the flow in which the different avenues in which people are coming and finding you. So, uh, first and foremost, if you're going into any kind of business, I think you have to have an online presence. So, figuring out the different systems and avenues in which people are able to connect with you and contact you for your services. um, Aside from that, I mean, I think the procedural flow from the minute a patient calls into your practice, what information you're trying to convey to them, what's the next step in terms of scheduling, paperwork, giving them information about how to get to your office and how to get their payment receipts and all of that kind of stuff. So from start to finish, really laying everything out and all the details so everyone can kind of follow the same flow of systems. Um, and then I think lastly, you have to have some type of system around organizing the legal paperwork and consents and all of that. So you've got to kind of figure that out and how you're going to relay that information and present it to the clients.
Thank you.
Mhm.
So the three additional systems that you've addressed is the marketing system in the form of online presence, procedural flow for essentially patient care coordination, and the organization of legal consents and essentially legal compliance on the healthcare side. Um, if one of these systems where you would say you absolutely should not worry about investing a certain amount of cash in a good system, which of these three would it be? Would it be the marketing, or would it be creating a good, reliable procedural flow system for patient care coordination, or would it be organizing the legal system?
I think the procedural flow, undoubtedly, if that's taken care of for you, it should be so smooth. The patient knows exactly what's coming to them, and they know the process and how to find things in terms of our practice. And the clinicians know exactly what to do as well. So you as the business owner then can just focus so much more time and energy on the really important things that make the business what it is. So nurturing, building, cultivating relationships in the community, and also really just focusing on how do we provide really good quality care. These procedural things, when you have a high patient volume, if they're not really taken care of um, in a very clear way, will bog you down inevitably with all the questions and complaints and all those different things.
Could you provide us an example of, well, two examples of one case where the procedural system broke down and it created trouble for you, and one example of where the procedural system actually succeeded and actually you could feel the ramifications of that success, the positive consequences from that?
Yeah, I think where it kind of broke down, I would say, is usually it comes from the clinician side, unfortunately, but it's where a clinician isn't necessarily delivering the information to the patient about where to find the information, how to log into their client portal. They're not telling the patient to contact them directly to schedule their next appointment. So the patient ends up calling the main number, which comes to me or my assistant director, and then it takes time away from our day to explain to the patient, okay, here's where you find everything. Here's the email of your clinician. Go back to them, schedule an appointment with them. So it's not significantly problematic, but it's just those moments that take away from your day that could be better used elsewhere. The area in which I think it's been so successful is that it's really helped financially. So I have a system in place where each clinician has to bill the client the day of their session. And I have a checkpoint system where within 2 days, if they haven't done that, I have the ability to check that, or someone on my staff that I've hired to do that can check that and remind them to do that. But that just really significantly helps cash flow in the business so that I'm not held up in investing in other things that I want to invest in to grow the practice. And I'm not looking for capital elsewhere either. So it just allows me to grow quickly and grow efficiently, um, and not have to stress about the financial part of it.
Of course. And thank you again. Now, returning back, I heard several times the need for networking and cultivating a relationship with the community. Is there do you have a system for networking with the community to cultivate your private practice's presence with the community?
Yeah, so there's a couple different things that I do here. One, I mean, when I was first starting out, I was just like cold calling and emailing any provider that would spend some time with me. Um, so I still periodically do that if I see someone in the area who's doing interesting work, I just want to connect with them and understand what services they're providing. Um, that's one avenue, and then the other avenue that I focus on is when people refer to us and I haven't heard of them before. I encourage all the clinicians on our staff to make contact with that referring doctor, or I myself will reach out to practice owner or whatnot to kind of say, thank you for the referral, and can we catch up and chat. And then I'll have a running list of people that I have networked with in the past, and I'll kind of refer back to that at least once a year and say, hey, it's been a while since I've caught up with this person. Let me reach out, see if I can get on their calendar and we can meet for lunch or have a quick Zoom call this year, and catch up. So that kind of really helps to foster and cultivate those relationships and create new ones. But I would say the most valuable lesson I've learned in cultivating these relationships is um, I got a really great piece of advice from someone early on in my career, where just to be super authentic and ask a lot of questions about the other person. I hated the idea of networking in the beginning. I'm an introvert. I hate small talk. But networking became so pleasurable because I was getting to know people and what they're passionate about, and naturally the conversation came to what I was passionate about, and they learned about me, and it just became a friendship more than anything over the years.
That is very fascinating. Um, and returning back, because healthcare is essentially at the end of the day a people business. Based on your experiences, how do you balance when we talk about systems that involve people? There's always a balance between trust and monitoring, especially um, when it comes to delegation. And you talked about this earlier about the need to build trust in the form of delegating. How have you navigated this balance in the past?
Yeah, that was tricky. It was really hard in the beginning. As I mentioned, it's a point of vulnerability for me because I put so much time and effort into this. So it's really, I try to treat it like, like any relationship. You can't just open your heart and kind of be overly trusting in anyone and everyone that comes into your life. But what you do is you just observe their behavior over time, and you look for the qualities you would feel like would make you trust in someone, like their consistency, their reliability, their ability to communicate well and take feedback well and adjust course. And so in the beginning, for me, when I bring someone onto my staff, it's a lot of observation. And anyone who works with me will tell you I'm not a micromanager. I would hate to be micromanaged myself. But in the beginning, there are small moments where if I'm catching things that people are doing that, again, slow down our system or affect our business in any way, I will communicate that. But what I'm looking for is a quick responsiveness to that and a turnaround, and having no issues thereafter. And as I'm observing that and I feel like this person really knows what they're doing, then I want to give them so much autonomy, and I don't micromanage at all. I really allow them to show that they're trustworthy and that I trust them. And so people on my staff know, like, no news is good news. You're doing a great job. And I tell people, do whatever you need to do in whatever way you want to do it, as long as it's not impacting our efficiency or our business. But it's slow, and that trust happens over time.
Of course. Have there been returning back to this, have there been situations where um and this is emergency situations where something that you have not expected it, whether it be in the form of patients coming in there, we won't go into their actual care, but in terms of the system you have in place, how has your system um, set itself up for dealing with administrative emergencies?
Mhm. Yeah. So Administrative emergencies. I mean, I think the way we've set it up is that I've have like multiple people that everyone can check in with. So I'm one point person, but I may not be available 24/7. And so we have my assistant director, Abby, who can easily take over everything that I do, and she does in many ways. And so there's multiple people that we can contact, but pretty much every like the system that I have in my practice is that everyone has access to take over my job. Everyone knows the login information for Comcast if our internet goes out, so people can you don't have to rely on someone else to solve your problems for you. The information is available for you to take charge in that moment if you need to.
So what I'm hearing is redundancy, information sharing,
Yes.
and essentially creating a what we what in business we would commonly call a web of redundancies to support your business.
That's exactly right. I didn't know there was a business terminology for that, but yes.
Yeah, it's very fascinating how in terms of we when we talk about business and psychology, many times they're talking about the exact same things
Yeah.
in completely different lingo. And so this is very fascinating. Um, on a little bit of a lighter topic, is there one in your first year of opening your private practice, was there one event that you remember or that you had a big takeaway from or a pivot for your private practice?
Yeah, one thing kind of comes to mind right away, and I think it plays into this struggle I had in the beginning of self doubt and not really trusting that I could do this. Essentially, what that led to is paying others for services, right? So I paid someone to who promised like this big marketing campaign and a lot of success, and I didn't properly vet this person. I didn't ask the important questions. I just figured, I know nothing about business, and this person has been in business and has been in the field of psychology for a while. So they must know way more than I do. So it's worth every penny. And I handed over some money, and it ended up being a total waste of money. And it was not, um, they were things that I learned from that. So it's not a total waste, but I learned how I could do better what this person was doing. And that was a great pivot moment for me to realize I don't need to just rely so much on others. Like, let me take the time to experiment with things myself and trust in myself and own it a little bit more and see where that takes me. And that was a big learning and shift moment for me.
Yes, I mean, it sounds like there was that shift, of monumental shift of understanding, realizing who to look for and when to delegate, like you said earlier. And this really connects back to what you said earlier about that. Um, if we may, what are since we brought up the subject of marketing, and there's a lot going on with marketing gimmicks out there,
Yes.
online Facebook ads. When you're looking for somebody who will help you with marketing, especially in the healthcare field, what are some key as you said, key vetting points that practitioners should look for?
Yeah, I mean, I think really understanding like if I think there's a lot of people who will say, I know SEO, I know search engine optimization, I know website development, I know how to get your page on the your website on the first page of Google. And so, what I really want to understand is how much experience does this person have specifically when it comes to the field of mental health? Because you're talking about a lot of keywords, and yes, I understand that there's an algorithm for searching what other people are searching for in that regard. But I want to make sure that this person has a solid understanding or at least work experience of what words are okay to use and not okay, which can be acceptable or unacceptable. So, for instance, like we work in the field of eating disorders and weight management, and I think at some point someone was suggesting um, a key phrase of like diet pills or something, and I was like, that's not necessarily going to attract the right person for our practice. You know, they're looking for a quick fix to lose weight quickly or in a problematic way. And so that to me becomes really important, that someone gets my industry or at least wants to have a conversation around that. Aside from that, I think uh, it's useful to understand. I think it's good to ask within your community, like who other psychologists who have you used, who have you found to be helpful in this area? What has your experience been? So asking those questions can be really helpful in getting some backing and support in trusting another person with this part of your business.
Um, yeah, that I mean, everything you just said, we agree. Like in our experience, we've had a lot of practices come to us who've also said there were these people who said they were SEO experts, and we said,
Right.
did they ask you for the expert advice? Because it really comes to the bottom of the day.
Yeah.
Even if you're an expert in digital marketing, you are the expert here. The practitioner is the expert. Always, they
Yeah.
should have the like
Yeah.
final say.
I think that you bring up something else that I think is really important is what I look for in working with someone is that this is an area that I have no idea what I'm doing. So, but I want to be educated. I want to understand the method and the process behind this and the rationale for why you're doing what you're doing. And that will give me more confidence and if you can show me along the way what you're doing, I can follow along and say, oh, yeah, this is actually working versus blindly trusting that it will work, or that it is working.
So there's this dialogue instead of the blind faith that a lot of we've we've experienced a lot of practices coming to us and telling us like, yeah, they said just trust us on blind faith, and no, 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 it's the dialogue we talk about and the cultivation of a relationship that you've also referred to it earlier.
Exactly.
Uh, in the last few minutes, how about we go to a little on another subject? What is the one advice you can give to a private practice, somebody who's just starting in private practice, or even thinking about entering private practice? Private practice. Excuse me. What is the one like key piece of advice you are looking to give to them?
Yeah. So here's what I'll say, and this ties into like a lot of the work I do with clients too, right? Is to notice the key piece of advice I have is to notice all the thoughts, feelings, and emotions that come up within you that make you doubt yourself, make you feel like you can't do this, and just to notice that we're not going to try to we can't get rid of our thoughts, feelings, and emotions, but try to let that hang out while you kind of come back and go for it anyway. And in the process of going for it, and in one of the therapeutic approaches we use, we talk about thinking about your values. So really setting that yucky stuff aside and then tapping into your most authentic self and saying, what is it that I dream my practice to be, and let me explore that, let me go with that, and let me make it my own, and let it be an authentic experience I'm excited about.
Yeah, um, that is an amazing piece of advice. And related to that piece of advice, um, when should somebody who's starting in private practice or think about starting in private practice reach out for help?
Hmm. I'm laughing because so I think initially I just want to say, like, ask for help anytime, whenever you can, just get started in asking help. But I think there's inherently some issues that come up with that. One, I think if you take too much time, there can be this avoidance that sneaks in. There's more time for all the self doubt to kind of creep in, and then you might just be stalling and like pulling the trigger. So I think allowing for too much time and starting the process too early isn't necessarily beneficial. And I was laughing because I was in a situation, which is a whole nother long story, but I was not expecting to go into private practice. I was put in a situation where I kind of started my practice and got it up and running within a couple weeks. So I had no clue what I was doing. And that was a steep learning curve and many sleepless nights and very stressful. So I also wouldn't recommend having no planning. Um, so I don't know. I think in terms of a psychology private practice, like optimally, like 6 months would 6 to 8 months would probably be great to start seeking out help and thinking about your practice and how to build it.
And you bring up a very interesting point in the last 10 minutes.
Yeah.
Going back, if you could go back in time and warn yourself, don't do this one thing when you were starting with Mind Body Health, what would that one thing be?
Um, hmm. I think the one thing it would be like, don't do this is I know I've repeated this so often, but don't get caught up in the self doubt because that just creates so many problems. I explained in terms of like it can cost you financially if you're focusing on self doubt. I think self doubt can come out as um, like reassurance seeking in terms of relationships and input from others. I think self doubt can lead to getting too much input from other people, and that can relate to making your business isn't your own, it's other people's ideas, and it moves you away from your authentic vision. And so I would say like don't don't attach yourself to the self-doubt. It's going to show up, but don't get too wrapped up in it if at all possible.
Thank you.
Mhm,
So I've heard self-confidence,
mhm.
but trust and delegation are perform create this sort of perfect triangle of inner systems for a successful private practice owner operator.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think there's some key emotional processes that are involved for sure that you have to work through and be aware of and mindful of.
And how can people who are trying to support private practice owner operators provide the help that you think is most needed for them?
Yeah, I mean, look, so in private practice, our biggest strength and where we make the most money is providing quality care. So I think any business that can help take over and ensure that they have the skills to one market to the specific audience to let clients know, hey, you have this issue. Here's an amazing group that can help you with this problem. So, anyone who can take over that part gives us more time to focus on actually providing those services. So, I think that's one piece. I think the other piece is as clinicians and psychologists, we know nothing about like website design and online SEO and all of that. So that would be a huge advantage to have someone help us through those pieces of it. Um, and yeah, I think the last piece is if there's someone who is really skilled at converting patients, right? So when they're calling, what can you share about the practice and the clinicians that are at Mind Body Health and how they're unique in being able to help with the client's specific issues and concerns. I think that's a really therapeutic kind of conversation, but it's not impossible for anyone like who doesn't have a therapy background to have those dialogues with patients. So I think that would be, I mean, that's a big part of the success of a business. So if someone can help with that, that's huge.
Thank you. I mean, this conversation has been amazing. And to find the, again, like I said, the similarities and
Mhm.
the core ideals of how business and psychology share very sort of parallel paths using different language is
Right.
really fascinating. And how psychology, like it really comes down to there is a psychological aspect to the successful business side of everything.
Yeah, it's funny. I'm laughing because my sister is in the business world and she does consulting and career coaching. And I hear her talk about certain things in her world. And I'm like, oh, we do the same thing in therapy, but we just use very different concepts and language.
That is fascinating.
Mhm.
Well, thank you very much for like sharing your time and sharing your experience about systems. This has been truly a wonderful time. Um, any final thoughts before we finish?
Um, no, I mean, I think I just, I, I feel like from my experience, I just want to encourage people if this is something you're passionate about and you're excited and you've thought about it, like don't doubt that you can do it. I didn't have any business experience. I didn't read a single business book and I didn't come up with a business plan or anything. So trust that you as a therapist or a healthcare provider, like you have it in you. It's not impossible. So just get the help in starting it off and believe in yourself. I think if I can do it, anybody can do it.
Now, you also, as a on-site, offer private practice consulting. How can people who are interested in reaching you, like talk to you and get the same input?
Yeah, absolutely. So you can always contact me on my website, which is mindbodyva.com. My direct email is S as in Sam, Doshi, my last name, Doshi, at mindbodyva.com. And just shoot me an email. I'm going to start offering those consultation services this summer. So I'm happy to help anyone who I can help and go through what I went through and work through building their own private practice.
Thank you. Thank you for coming today. It's been a great conversation. I'm sure our listeners will reach out to you. Once again, thank you.
Thank you so much. This has been great.